because I mean, I can say a lot of things as how I think about trust, but when I went to look at research, what it fundamentally said is that there is an absolute definitional void. It is one of those concepts that is swimming in vagueness. There is a view that reinforces the notion that trust is a psychological state in which you express the willingness to be vulnerable, based on positive expectations with others. Then there is a view that looks at trust as process rather than state, and it looks at trusting processes like intentions, expectations, behaviors, thoughts, etc. But in the end, there is no agreement. The most complex psychological experiences, subjective experiences, actually are very hard to define. So that said, I continue to look at other things and at people who said things that I found really interesting. And when I can't come up with research, I go to philosophers and poets who have a different way of trying to grapple with the unexplainable. So Adam Phillips, this wonderful English psychoanalyst, starts to talk about how trust is a risk masquerading as a promise. Thought that was very beautiful. Then he said, trust is a word that we often put too much trust in.
That sentence is self-defeating.
Yeah. Then Rachel Botsman talked about how trust is an active or confident engagement with the unknown. By definition, trust is a leap of faith. Therefore, if you think transparency leads to trust, probably not always. Sometimes, but at other times, transparency leads to surveillance. Surveillance is the opposite of trust. Trust is what you live with what you don't know. If you always have to know, you're not trusting.
This was such a surprise to me when Rachel captured this. I had always thought of transparency as a driver of trust, right? So if you want somebody to have positive expectations about your behavior, if you want them to be comfortable being vulnerable with you, then you shouldn't hide anything from them. And then Rachel said, wait a minute, if you trust me, you don't need to know what I'm hiding.
That's right.
That is a big frame shift.
No, but look, helping is a lot of things, right? Helping makes you feel rich. Rich internally. Helping is the most powerful antidepressant, doing for others. Yeah. Helping, generosity brings joy. Helping is indeed, other people need me. I will never be alone. They come to me. I'm protected. Helping is a state in which I don't have to be dependent on others because I make others be dependent on me. Helping has a lot of aspects to it. Which one it is for you? See, this is where it becomes different. I don't look for systematization, which I think what organizational psychology has to do, because you need to aggregate groups of people. Yep. I am on the other side of that, where I'm more looking at what is the individual resonance of this thing. What is helping for you? What you feel when you give, only you can tell me. If it is a defense against something else, only you can tell me. Mm-hmm. If on some level it protects you from other states that you experience as more vulnerable, only you can tell me. It's like the answer that you're trying to find from me is in you.
Well, that is definitely not helpful. I wanted to talk about being a people pleaser. So, Esther, is it fair to say that I am more agreeable, more of a people pleaser than you?
Yes. Yes.
Why do you say that?
Because I don't think of myself as a people pleaser.
Okay. I don't think of you as one either. Which is why I was so pleasantly surprised.
But for that, we have to define what goes in the word people pleaser, right? This people pleaser is a history of life. It's not something you become one day. It's the way you learned to maintain your attachments. People pleaser is when you have learned that unless you fulfill the conditions, the people who need to take care of you won't be doing it in the way that they should. People pleaser is a fear of not what happens when you please, but what happens, how attuned you have become at what displeasure can mean for others. And therefore, it's an avoidance of conflict. Yeah. And therefore, I can say yes to you and to you and to you, and everybody I've said yes to, and then everybody at the end resents me because I have not been able to fulfill the yeses to all the people, and in the end, I know what everybody else thinks, feels, and wants, and I have no clue what goes on inside of me. Because I'm organized by this threat and dread.
It seems like you know me very well. Yeah, I mean, when I think about when I would describe myself as a people pleaser, I think of a few things. One is prioritizing other people's feelings above your own priorities and needs.
Consistently.
Consistently,
It is
yeah,
the
not
consistency of it
in one
that's- yeah,
situation,
yeah.
but habitually.
Yeah, yeah.
I think about
In order to avoid,
conflict, which is the next thing, right? I
and the
think
conflict stems from.
is this a test?
No, it's really what am I avoiding? I'm avoiding the wrath of others.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I don't want to. Yeah, as the kid who is always afraid of being called to the principal's office, that's very much the dread. I think the non-confrontational stance also, though, is not just a fear of incurring the wrath of others. It's also a fear of damaging the relationship. And thinking about, okay, if I can just make this person happy in the moment, then maybe the relationship won't be broken as a result. Now,
But that means that you are the one who carries the anxiety over the loss of the relationship, as if you're the only one who cares about that relationship. And that's not, that is also back to the power
Yes.
thing. It's like, why is one person living the threat of loss here, and where is the other one?
yeah. So I guess on that, I feel like as a recovering people pleaser, I've tried to overcome some of these tendencies. Some of that came from being trained as a negotiator and then teaching negotiation. Some of that came from learning to do conflict mediation. A lot of it has come from just ending up with an accumulating number of requests where I just can't say no to all of them anymore.
And what about that it came with the notion that I can say no and you can be frustrated with that, and those two shall coexist?
Yeah.
It's that thing that people find impossible to hold. It's how do I say no? And, but what if the other person doesn't like it? They are entitled not to like it. And those two will live together. That doesn't mean the relationship will dissolve because of it. That's the fear that people live. It's irrational fear.
Yeah.
Because the way it gets rationalized is people say, it's just not important enough for me. It's not worth the conversation. It's not worth getting into it. It's all these rationalizations that kind of say it doesn't really matter. But meanwhile, at every step of the game, you're foregoing you, because you literally experience that the relationship only continues if the other people are pleased with you.
Yeah, which is a pretty sad state of affairs if that's what it takes to maintain a relationship.